Greetings, exiles. I am continuing my journey. I'll start with the upgrades and items I've found over the past week. In my last video, I complained a bit about how I couldn't find a second good Venter's Gamble. And apparently Chris watched my video, and so he gave me this one. That's a pretty good ring, isn't it? But that's not all. Another very cool Venter's Gamble. I now have 2 crazy rings that greatly improved my resistances and gave me lots of items rarity and quantity. The big question many of you have is, how does he do that? I don't know the answer to that myself. Just magic. Or streamer client. Sometimes lucky all the time. Also, I finally got this timeless jewel. This is the perfect place for it. Now I have access to Keystone Inner Conviction, which gives me 21% more spell damage. And that's a very nice boost for my DPS. Also, this Militant Faith gives me extra elemental resistances, and that's what I need, because in my build I always have problems with resistances. However, this timeless jewel changes some of my skill nodes, and I don't need that at all. But I'm hoping a couple of divine orbs will fix that. Nope. It doesn't suit me. That's it. Perfect. I still need enlightened support, so I went back to Trial of the Ancestors. But this time it was a pretty good trip. And here it is, enlightened support. And another one. The only thing left to do now is to level them up. And some bonuses that I could use. Now my enlightened support is level 3 and it's time for double corruption. Hopefully I can get level 4. Unlucky. And miss again. I also have to level up again, and unfortunately it's quite a long process. Let's see what enlightened support level 3 gives me. First of all, I can remove Eldritch Battery, and it frees up a skill point which I can spend on something useful. I can also replace cold penetration support with inspiration and increase my DPS. But I need 3 blue and 2 red sockets, and this color combination is very hard to get on my bow. But I hope that Syndicate will help me with this. Always one. But that's what I need, and now I can use the right support gems. And the last thing is tattoos. I have quite a few of them, and now it's time to use them. One for Onslaught because movement and cast speed is what I need. Also, increased skill effect duration is a very important characteristic for Blade Vortex. Because the longer it is effect, the easier it is for us to sustain 10 blades, which gives us more DPS. Unfortunately, I only have 5 of these tattoos, and frankly, it's not enough. Besides tattoos, I could use a helmet with enchantment 30% increased blade vortex duration, but it's almost impossible to find such a helmet on SSF. I found one, but it's only 20% and it's a low-level base, which doesn't suit me. So I do not use it in my build. In general, work with what you have, but if you suddenly have a helmet with this enchantment, then use it. It will really make this build stronger. And the last tattoos are increased herald effect and some reservation efficiency. So let's see what I ended up with. While you're enjoying this great gameplay and these satisfying explosions, I'd like to talk a little bit about this build. Occultist Blade Vortex is something I really like. It's fun to play, and it's quite challenging but interesting to gather gear for it on SSF. But unfortunately, this build is not for everyone, and I cannot recommend it to most of my viewers, because it is very squishy. And even though I have a lot of experience playing on Lightning Deadeye, a build that is also quite squishy. But Blade Vortex is a whole other level. Because with Deadeye we can easily kill monsters off-screen and avoid dangers. But with Blade Vortex we can't do that. This skill has a very small range. Of course, after we increase our AoE, add explodey chest, and add good equipment, we can also kill monsters off-screen. But we have to live up to that moment. In addition, there are other nuances, and not always everything dies from our explosions. So if you decide to try this build, then get ready that the early game will be very hard. Also, we don't have easy access to spell suppression. And without it, T16 maps are very deadly. So without expensive items that can greatly increase our defense, high-level red maps will not be a pleasant experience. And you will have to learn to play carefully and understand which modifiers on the maps are dangerous for you and which ones are not. Although maybe I'm slightly exaggerating and speaking more from a SSF perspective. And most likely in the Trade League it won't be so bad because you will have easy access to good gear. But anyway, I like the build very much and I want to try it in Trade League because there you can make a real monster out of it. Destroyer of any content in the game as well as your FPS. I'd also like to talk a bit about my Atlas, because a lot of my viewers had questions about it. Most of the time I use this Atlas right here. Occasionally I added Meticulous Appraiser if I wanted to hunt for unique items. But otherwise, Abyss, Legion, and Delirium with Wandering Path have been the backbone of my strategy because these mechanics add a lot of monsters to the map, and the more monsters, the more loot. I also want to draw your attention to Harvest because I used it a lot for crafting, swapping scarabs, and of course gambling. I was also often asked how I juice my maps. But it's very hard for me to answer that question because this is the solo self-found league and I don't have access to infinite scarabs and sextants here. So I used what I had and tried to have as many monsters on each map as possible. For example, whenever possible I always used Abyss on map device because it's a very good mechanic for finding unique items. The thing about Abyss monsters is that they have very good quantity and usually have slightly better loot than normal monsters. But if you add Magic Find gear, some scarabs, and Meticulous Appraiser, you can get loot explosions like this. Wow! My first loot goblin. From the Abyss. Anyway, if you're like me and you're hunting for unique items on SSF, Abyss is your best friend. It's the same with Legion. Monsters from Legion also have a good quantity and usually drop unique items from them. Syndicate is another very useful mechanic that I have used often. Generally it gives a lot of useful options, especially for the solo self-found, but I've used it mostly as a source of winged scarabs. For those of you who don't understand what I'm talking about, I'll briefly explain. First, you need to place as many Syndicate members in intervention as possible. Ideally that's 5 people, including the leader. Then increase their level to 3. After that, we kill Katarina. And take our scarabs. Then use Harvest crafting to change them to the ones you want. I mostly use Divination and Reliquary. I managed to accumulate quite a few of these scarabs and then I did a juicy mapping session. Alright. I got it. Enough tedious talk. It's time for some real content. It's time to see if my luck is as crazy as you guys say it is. Oh no. Unlucky. Mageblood was so close. Okay, no time to get upset because I have a few more improvements planned for the build. Let's make a new helmet. I found this fractured base and it fits me perfectly because dexterity is a very important attribute for this build. I'm going to use these essences until I get something suitable with items rarity. Like this one. Not the best helmet, but I don't want to waste all my essences right now. Useful benchcraft. And then Exalted Slam. It'd be nice to get life, just once. Wow. Really? but it's a very low tier. Next time we should ask for something more specific, for example, Tier 1 life. And the final touch, implicits. Good. At this stage Shrimpsoro is very weak gloves and should be changed. I found this base with a very strong modifier. Speaking of which, items with this modifier can be found in Alva's temple or ritual. Benchcraft suffixes cannot be changed and then harvest craft. Wow! Tier 1 life and even with items rarity. Very nice gloves. Now another benchcraft and some implicits. Only 35% of my physical damage converted to cold damage. And I need 100%. So let's keep crafting. And now it's time for a new quiver. Let's get a base like this. I need a quiver with Crusader influence. Next, harvest craft. Perfect. Now it's time for the syndicate. Very good. Best result for me. Don't forget to pick up your winged scarabs. Armor and evasion will be useful for me. And as always, benchcraft at the end. A nice quiver, which along with my new gloves gives me 60% of my physical damage converted to cold damage. The other 40% I will get from this mastery. I finally found an amulet with Shaper influence. Sort of. Alteration spam until I find an increased items quantity. Good thing I've saved up a lot of alteration orbs, and now I can enjoy this process for a very long time. That's it. Now benchcraft suffixes can't be changed and then harvest craft. Nice. Life and mana regeneration are pretty useful modifiers. Now blocking mana and exalted slam. Not the worst outcome. And at the end again benchcraft and anoint. Well, I'm almost done, but I need Enlighten level 4. No way. I hope it's not yellow juice bait. No way. I did it. I even have extra divination cards left. Thanks, Chris. That's it for sure. Let's change our gear. Speaking of which, I can now activate another aura, Zealotry, and it's a very nice boost to our damage. Now let's test the character a bit with the new gear. I think my new gear is pretty good, not perfect of course, but for a solo self-found league it's pretty good. I also want to answer one question that my viewers have been wondering, how much time I spent on this character. But I will not show play time because there is a lot of AFK time and the number of monsters killed is a more appropriate parameter that shows the real picture. I killed over 2 million monsters to make this series of videos. 2 million innocent souls were slaughtered for you. Speaking of which, I killed that many monsters in a month of play because that's when I created this character. I would also like to show off my collection of unique T1 items. I found quite a few in the past week. Some of them are pretty good. And these are all the T1 unique items that I found during my journey. Quite a few, but unfortunately I didn't find any of these items. They would have greatly improved my build. But sadly I didn't. I also didn't find a single T0 item, and that's very strange. With so many monsters killed and T1 items found, I should have found at least one T0 unique item. Although maybe it was some trash and I accidentally missed it, but anyway, nothing interesting. But that's the reality of magic find. And it happens a lot, even to the best of us. I think this is a good moment to end this video and this journey. Thank you all for watching, commenting, and giving me advice. I appreciate it. Also, I will be very grateful for your likes, subscriptions, and comments. And if you have any questions, join my Discord channel. The link you will find in the description of this video. Bye everyone, and see you in new videos.